I just found out my wife secretly transferred $250, $0 from our joint account to her brother's offshore account before our divorce, claiming it was inheritance. But the lawyer says it's actually part of our shared estate. And now I'm facing a legal battle over everything we own, including our family home. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, sitting alone in our house, staring at a stack of papers that turned my entire world upside down. It all started with a gut feeling that something was off, but I never expected to uncover the kind of betrayal I did. The most shocking part, my wife, who I always thought was just a little high maintenance but otherwise decent, had been secretly screwing around and stealing from us at the same time. It began a few months ago when I started noticing subtle changes, became more distant, secretive even. She was always quick to dismiss my concerns, saying I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her. She'd get defensive if I asked about her phone or her whereabouts. I'd catch her lying about where she was going or who she was with. Small things, but enough to make me suspicious. Still, I tried to brush it off, telling myself maybe I was just overthinking it. Then came the money. We have a joint account, nothing extravagant, just enough to cover bills and a little savings. But last week I noticed a strange transfer. $250, $0 gone from our account. I was stunned. I called the bank and they confirmed the transfer was made to an offshore account under her brother's name, Jason. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said it was an inheritance from her grandmother that she was holding onto for her brother, who was having some financial trouble. She claimed it was family business, nothing for me to worry about. But something didn't sit right. I asked her to show me the paperwork. She got defensive, saying I was being paranoid again, that I was accusing her of stealing from her family. I pressed harder and she finally snapped, calling me controlling and jealous, saying I was ruining everything with my suspicions. That's when I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes. She was hiding something, and whatever it wasn't just that inheritance. I decided to dig deeper. I hired a private investigator, and what I uncovered was even worse. Had been having an affair with her boss, Mark, for months. I found emails, texts, even secret meetings. She'd meet him late at night, sometimes in hotels, sometimes just in her car. She lied about everything, said she was working late, going out with friends, but the truth was she was sneaking around, cheating on me and stealing money at the same time. It was like she was living this double life. Honestly, I felt numb for days. My mind kept racing, trying to process how someone I trusted could do this. I thought about all the times she called me insecure or paranoid, and now I saw her for what she really was, a lying, manipulative bitch who used me in our marriage for her own gain. I couldn't believe I was like this. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. It was a whirlwind of anger, heartbreak, and betrayal. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure what would come next. The day I found out the full extent of her betrayal was like being hit by a freight train. I had the evidence now, texts, bank statements, the private investigator's report, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I made a plan to confront her face to face, but I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me. I never thought she'd lie so blatantly, so shamelessly about everything. That evening she came home early, which was unusual. Usually she'd stay out late with her friends or work events, but this time she was back before dinner. I was sitting in the living room pretending to watch TV, but I was really just waiting. When she walked in, I could see it in her eyes. She knew I knew, and she was trying to act normal. That's when I decided to get it over with. I looked right at her and said, "I know about the affair. I know about the money, the offshore account, the texts you've been hiding, everything." Her face went pale for a second, then she started to argue, insisting she was innocent, that I was crazy, that I was twisting everything. She threw out words like misunderstanding, family matter, and you do. Trust me? But I wasn't buying it. I told her I'd hired a private investigator and I had the proof. Her excuses fell flat and her face twisted into a mask of rage and desperation. She started crying, claiming she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that she was sorry. She begged me to forgive her, saying she was under pressure, that her affair was just a moment of weakness, that the money was for her brother and she didn't mean to hurt me, but I saw through her lies. I told her I didn't want to hear it, that I was done trusting her, that her actions proved she was a liar and a thief. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. She got even more bitchy, snapping at me, accusing me of being paranoid and controlling, saying I was ruining her life. She yelled that I was overreacting, that she'd never cheat on me, never steal from us. But I knew better. I had the evidence and I knew her game. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak, the kind that makes your stomach churn and your hands shake. I couldn't believe I married someone capable of this level of deception. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, trying to make sense of it all. How could she do this? How did I miss all the signs? I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left with a shattered marriage, a mountain of lies, and a sinking feeling that I'd been played for a fool. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was knowing I had to face the reality of losing everything I'd built with her, our home, our savings, our future. It was like waking up in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. After confronting that night, everything changed. She didn't leave right away. She stayed in the house, throwing fits, crying, trying to manipulate me into backing down. But I was done. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to protect what was mine and stop her from siphoning off more money or twisting the situation to her advantage. The next day, I called my lawyer first thing in the morning. I wanted to get a clear picture of my legal standing, especially with that offshore account and the stolen money. The lawyer, a guy named Steve, was pretty straightforward. He told me that the transfer of $250, $0 to her brother's account wasn't just inheritance, as she claimed. It was part of our shared estate, and legally, she couldn't just transfer that money without my approval. He also said that given the evidence of her affair, I had grounds for divorce on the basis of infidelity, and I could potentially claim a significant portion of the assets, including the house. That was a huge blow. I'd always thought we were solid, that our marriage was stable, but apparently had been planning this for a while, cheating, stealing, lying. It made me sick to think about all the times she'd told me she loved me, how she'd pretend to be the perfect wife while secretly betraying me. I decided I needed to take control. I informed her that I was moving out of the house temporarily, not just to get some space, but to prevent her from draining our accounts further or hiding anything else. I also started working with the lawyer on a restraining order, just enough to keep her away from the house and prevent her from making any more financial moves. I didn't want her to walk away with more of our money or try to manipulate the situation in her favor. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her financials. I found out she'd been funneling money into offshore accounts for months, hiding assets, and even transferring some of our joint savings into her personal accounts. I had no idea she was capable of this level of deception. It was like discovering a whole new side of her, cold, calculating, ruthless. The more I learned, the angrier I got. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about the principle. How could she betray me, our marriage, everything we built, for some affair and some quick cash? I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and deep sadness. I loved her once. I really did. But now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who only cared about herself. I started to prepare for the legal battle ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy. She'd fight dirty, lie, try to turn people against me. But I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I was just doing this for the money. I was doing it for my dignity, for the years I'd invested in that marriage, and for the hope that someday I'd be free of her lies. The hardest part was accepting that I might lose the house, that I might have to start over from scratch, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with everything she'd done. I had to stand up, even if it meant a long, ugly fight. I looked at the papers in front of me, the evidence I'd collected, and I promised myself I wouldn't be the fool she thought I was. I'd fight for justice, even if it hurt. And yeah, I knew I'd be for a while, but I also knew I'd come out stronger on the other side. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I moved out of the house, not because I wanted to abandon everything, but because I needed space to breathe and to let the legal process unfold. Was furious. She called me every name in the book, accused me of trying to ruin her life, and even had the nerve to cry crocodile tears about how I was destroying her. Honestly, I didn't care. I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. The only thing I cared about now was protecting what was mine and making sure she couldn't keep getting away with her manipulations. I kept my lawyer updated daily, and he laid out the plan. First, we'd get a court order to freeze her accounts, especially the offshore one, and prevent her from transferring any more money. Then, we'd start the process of dividing the assets, including the house. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, probably try to claim I was overreacting or that I had no proof. But I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. Meanwhile's attitude shifted from bitchy to downright hostile. She started showing her true colors, snapping at me over trivial things, trying to guilt-trip me into staying, even accusing me of being controlling and possessive. She'd say I was ruining her reputation, that I was making her out to be a criminal. But I knew better. I knew she was the one who'd been sneaking around, stealing from us, lying about everything. She couldn't spin her way out of this. One night she showed up at the house unannounced. She begged me to talk, to listen to her side. She said she was sorry, that she'd made mistakes, that she loved me and didn't want to lose everything. I told her I didn't want to hear it. I told her she'd betrayed me, that she'd betrayed our vows, and that I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I told her I was done pretending everything was okay. She looked at me, eyes filled with fury and desperation, and said, "You're just mad because I cheated on you. That's why you're doing this. You're insecure." That was the last straw. I realized then that she wasn't going to change. She was only going to dig her heels in, try to manipulate the situation, and lie her way out of it. I knew I had to be strong, not just for myself but for the truth. I told her she needed to leave, that I'd call the cops if she didn't go peacefully. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving me standing there, exhausted and drained, but finally feeling like I had taken control of my life again. The legal battle was brutal. She hired her own lawyer and things got nasty fast. She claimed I was abusive, controlling, that I'd been cheating on her too, which was a lie, and tried to spin the story that she was the victim. But I had the evidence, her texts, emails, bank statements, and I was prepared to fight back. I refused to let her manipulate the truth any longer. Through it all, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief that I finally knew the truth, and anger that I'd been played for a fool for so long. I trusted her, loved her, and she'd used me. That realization hurt worse than anything, but it also fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not after everything she'd done. I was determined to see this through, no matter how ugly it got. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I wouldn't be the one to lose. Not this time. The court hearings were a nightmare. Lawyers played dirty, twisting facts and trying to paint me as the bad guy. She sat there with that bitchy smirk, acting innocent, while I had all the evidence on my phone, ready to expose her lies. It was a constant battle to keep my composure. Every time she accused me of something, I wanted to scream that she was the one who'd been cheating, stealing, and lying. But I stayed calm, knowing that in court the truth would come out. The judge was not stupid. After reviewing everything, bank statements, her texts, the private investigator's report, it was clear she'd been manipulating the situation from the start. The judge ordered that the offshore account be frozen and that she couldn't transfer any more money. That was a small victory, but I knew the fight wasn't over. The biggest issue was the house. She claimed she wanted to stay, said she'd fight me for full custody of the property, and tried to make it look like I was the one causing trouble. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the emotional fallout. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. Every night was a cycle of anger and sadness. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. I loved her, or at least I thought I did, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who used me and our marriage as a stepping stone for her own gain. The realization hit me hard. I'd given her everything and she'd thrown it all away for sex and money. Despite all that, I knew I had to stay strong. I kept going to therapy, trying to process everything. I also started planning my next steps, how to rebuild my life, how to protect what was left. I wanted my house, my savings, and my dignity back. I refused to let her take everything without a fight. I knew she'd try to drag this out, drag me into court battles for years, but I was prepared for the long haul. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of winning. It was during this time that I realized how much I'd changed. I used to be trusting, maybe even. Now I was cautious, guarded. I'd learned the hard way that not everyone is who they seem, and not every marriage is built on honesty. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. Looking back, I can say, I'm glad I found out now instead of later. Yeah, it hurts like hell, and yes, I lost a lot of time and trust, but I also gained clarity. I know I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. I'm stronger than I thought I was, and I have a new perspective on what I want from life and relationships. The whole experience has been a brutal lesson in trust, betrayal, and resilience. And I know I'll come out of this, eventually, better and wiser than before. The final court date came after months of chaos, and honestly, I was ready for it. I had fought tooth and nail to protect what was mine, our home, our savings, my dignity. The lawyer tried every trick in the book to sway the judge, claiming I was the bad guy, that she was the victim, but it was all smoke and mirrors. I presented every piece of evidence I had: texts, bank statements, the investigator's report, and I could see the judge's skepticism growing. When the judge finally made the ruling, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The offshore account was ordered to remain frozen, and the court recognized that had no right to transfer our shared assets without my consent. The house was awarded to me, and she was ordered to pay a hefty sum in restitution for the stolen money. The judge also made it clear that her affair, lying, and theft were serious breaches of our marriage vows, and that she had no grounds to claim custody of the house or any part of our joint estate. Watching her reaction, her bitchy smirk fading into a stunned silence, felt oddly satisfying. She realized she'd lost, that her manipulations hadn't worked, and that her lies couldn't cover up the truth anymore. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like a weight had been lifted, but also like I'd been through a war. I knew this wasn't the end, but it was a new beginning. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding my life. I moved back into the house, cleaned out what was left of her lies, and slowly started to heal. I cut ties with her completely. No more calls, no more texts. I knew I had to focus on myself now, on rebuilding trust in my own judgment and learning to love and trust again, but on my own terms. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from all this. I learned that trust isn't given lightly, that people can surprise you in the worst ways, and that sometimes the only way to find peace is to stand up and fight for it. I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your own dignity and making sure you don't get played again. So here I am, finally free from the chaos, ready to move forward. I've got scars, sure, but I also have strength I didn't know I had. I hope that anyone going through something similar remembers, no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way out. You just have to be willing to face the truth, fight for what's right, and never let anyone take away your sense of self. Because in the end, the only person who truly controls your happiness is you.